So welcome back to the AI Journal podcast. Really excited to be here today. We're on day 2 of the Web Summit. We are joined by Joe Atkinson from PwC. It's amazing to have you with us. Looking forward to talking around what PwC is doing, what the world's looking like to you, what your experience has been at Web Summit. But can you first of all just give us a quick overview, who you are, where you're from, what's your background, please?
Sure. Awesome to be with you. So Tom, I'm Joe Atkinson. I serve as the Vice Chair and Chief Products and Technology Officer for PwC in the US.
Amazing. And what's the kind of story behind you, sir? With coming to PwC, you've been there for some time, what's it been looking like going through some real transformational times at the moment with the pandemic? Give us a bit of story of what that is with PwC.
I'm going to go with your phrase of some time. We'll call 28 years some time. So it's been a little while that I've been there. I promised my wife I would work at the firm for 2 to 3 years and then go out and get a real job. So she's still asking when that's going to happen. Thankfully, she loves the firm as much as I do. So that's been great. And honestly, there's no better time to be in a role like mine. It is exciting times. The empowerment of people, employees with new technologies,
Yes.
The opportunity for companies like ours, the opportunities for our clients. It's just an awesome time to be in a role like mine.
Yeah, love it. And could you give us a bit of a picture then, Joe, with what's PwC doing? How has it changed recently? What's been something that you've been seeing? You're in a very hot spot at the moment, loving the transformation that's coming out of PwC. I think you're communicating it really well, but for people that are maybe a bit unsure, paint a picture of what that change has been for the past 5 years, and maybe what that kind of picture looks like for the 5 years going forward.
Yeah, we'll go maybe pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, because I think that has a lot of implications on everything. But pre-pandemic, we saw the trend lines that I think a lot of companies saw, which is that any organization was going to be successful in today's environment had to put better technology tools in the hands of their people. And they had to give a better technology experience to their people as well. We all expect a consumer-like technology experience. And that's true of our PwC employees around the world. So for somebody that's not familiar with us, we're 50,000 employees in the US. We're almost 300,000 around the world today. So we have this wonderful footprint around the world that gives us visibility into trends. It gives us interaction with our clients. And what we believed and what our clients were telling us is that they needed a much more tech-enabled experience from PwC than we traditionally provided. They wanted more value, which is something our clients have always told us. I always say the bar goes up in everybody's business, and that includes ours, so they wanted us to keep increasing the value. But they also wanted us to manage our costs. They wanted us to be good partners to them. And so that requires, in our parlance, that requires the smart application of technology. So we started by looking across the most powerful asset we had, and that's our people. And we believed if we provided people the technology skills that they needed to apply new and emerging technologies in new ways, that they would change the way work is getting done. And that turned out to be a really, really good bet because they did exactly what we hoped they would do.
Love it.
I think PwC are one of the best companies where I use the phrase in Ireland called you eat your own dog food.
Yes.
Tell us about some of the technologies that you've actually put into the hands of your colleagues. And what have they done with those technologies? What are the outcomes you've been able to achieve? Because that's the key thing.
Yeah, Kieran, it's a great question. So what we saw is across all of our businesses, and in the US we're in 2 segments. We call it Trust Solutions and Consulting Solutions. But think of that as the traditional assurance businesses, our tax compliance and consulting businesses, our deals business, and of course our traditional consulting businesses. One of the things that we saw that was in common across all of those businesses is our people were dealing with data, and they were dealing with data at scale. So we believed that if we could give them better tools to intake data, to cleanse that data and prepare it for analysis, and to really put them on a stronger foot so that when the client asked for the insights that they hired us for in the first place, they could get to the answers faster, that we could achieve those outcomes of a more tech-enabled experience, lower cost, and greater value. We also knew that our people were, at times, frustrated with the nature of the way the work was that they had to do. Lots of people that have started their careers in consulting, they expect the first couple of years you're grinding out spreadsheets and you're grinding out presentations, and there's certainly plenty of that. What we wanted to do was get people out of the low-value work and really give them an opportunity to automate the things that didn't require the horsepower that we'd hired them for in the first place, but really allow them to bring their best self to deliver the value clients hired us for. So we provided a suite of tools. We standardized across in the US on data ingestion and data visualization tools and bots and automation tools. And we provided that access to everybody. And one of the things our US chairman said that I think was incredibly impactful is when we announced this to our people, he said, look, we know that the world's changing. We know that you need different skills for where you're going. We believe we have an obligation as an employer to help you get there. Of course, as an employee, you have to help bridge the gap too. But if you bridge the gap, you come along with us, we're going to do everything we can not to leave you behind. That for us was a really powerful moment because it converted transformation from this business thing that executives wanted to do to get better business outcomes, which is important, to what we really believed it was about, which was, yes, we want to get better business outcomes, but we want to prepare people for the future.
Yeah.
We have so many talented people that come through PwC. They won't all become partners, and they won't all spend 30 years in the firm. And so how do we prepare them for a successful career? We give them the tools and the technologies that they need. So that's the way that we went about it. And over 3 years, we trained hundreds of thousands of people around our network in those technologies.
Wow. And what has that done in terms of your knowledge and the skills that you now bring to your consulting assignments? Because that's a hell of a test bed to have learned.
Yeah, we learned a lot, and we made mistakes along the way, like everybody does in a transformation. One of the things that we learned is that our teams, just like everybody else, needed to know why we were asking them to do what we were asking them to do. I had a client describe to me one time, it was a client's words, so I'll steal their words. They said, Joe, everybody talks about people being resistant to change. They said, actually, people love change. They embrace change. What they don't like is taking on change with having no clue what the benefit's going to be to them individually. And as an employee, it actually feels really risky. I'm going to apply this technology so that what happens next? You're going to take my job away and give it to a bot? And what we needed to do was help our people understand, no, we want you to be more impactful. We want you to be more skilled. If you're more skilled and more impactful, tasks are going to change. The things you do today are not going to be the things you're doing in 5 years. You'll be in a better position to do them 5 years from now. From a client perspective, that was almost the most fun part. There's been a lot of fun to this, as you probably can detect. But one of the best parts was in clients coming to us and saying, what are you doing? And we would say, well, what do you mean? They said, well, something feels really different. And so when we started to talk to them about what we were doing, you then saw clients spark that interest, which actually caused us to create a commercial technology to help clients go on the same journey, a technology we call ProEdge.
And how do you bring them on that journey? Because you're creating the future, but how do you see the future? And then how can you communicate this future that you may or may not know exists over here in 3 or 5 years' time? Because that's a little bit mind-bending.
Yeah, Kieran, it's such a great question, because I was saying to somebody yesterday, one of the things I love best about predicting the future and projecting my views on what's going to happen is nobody holds you accountable for that, because we all know it's crazy, like the things that are happening. So with the benefit of zero accountability, I think the one of the great privileges of our business is that the future gets defined collaboratively with our clients. We have this visibility into thousands of companies around the world in all kinds of different segments and sectors, geographies, in different stages of growth. We have startups, we have mid-tier private companies, we have massive private companies, we have massive public companies. And so they're all managing their businesses, and meanwhile, because we have this great privilege of trust that they have in us, they're talking about what the issues are that they're working on, which helped give us an indicator of saying, okay, if that's where our clients are going, then we need to be there with them, or we need to get ahead of them so that we can start to serve them in a way that delivers that value and that outcome that they're looking for.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Absolutely love it.
I was thinking as well when you were saying that, Joe, it's such a great point, because I always take it when people come to us at AI Journal, they say, well, the way future's going, Tom, can you predict what's going to happen in 10 years? And I say, I don't know what I'm for dinner in two weeks' time, let alone what the outcome's going to be. But I always look at it like I know, if like you're saying PwC are, which is great, it's outcome driven, and it's looking at what can we improve, how can we improve this, and how can we bring the people with us, how can we properly transform, because people miss that. Where would you say that is? And you've touched on it slightly, but I'd like to delve into it a little bit more, because we see, just to give a quick background to the listeners today, that we see people come to us, and the amount of times people don't actually forward think, or they say, we're going to implement a sexy new tool like RPA, but what's the actual outcome? Do we actually need it? Is that cost going to help us internally as well as externally? How are you communicating that across the company? Because PwC's in a lot of different initiatives, a lot of awesome areas, and it was just, how do you keep that culture, communicating it clearly? I'd love to know.
Yeah, it was really, really hard, by the way, really hard. And again, I think we got it mostly right, but there were times that we fell down like everybody else does. But one of the things that I think was really important, and it goes to your point on tools, there are phenomenal tools out there. We have some great partnerships that we've really benefited from. But one of the mistakes that we made, and a lot of our clients have made along the way, is that you end up with a collection, a portfolio of tools that actually confuses your users, because they don't know which ones they're supposed to be using. And one of the powerful things that we did, that frankly was to simplify the journey, but really worked to get us adoption and understanding, was we standardized the tools. And so now when you're sitting in the conference room, either in person or now virtually post-pandemic, you're sitting virtually together. If you have a question about the technology, the likelihood that the person you're working with knows the technology in our environment is 100%.
Yeah.
Because they've been trained in the same technologies. Now, did you sacrifice potentially some functionality on the outskirts? Maybe.
Yeah.
In some cases, I think we do have the leading tools. In some cases, maybe we have the second or third.
Yeah.
But the power of people that now are what we call human-led and tech-powered, the power of people to take advantage of the tech, that has actually been huge in terms of getting the adoption and the understanding. People learned it from each other versus having to hear it from me.
Yeah.
And in terms of the technologies itself, you've got a standard tool, so as you mentioned, data visualization, robotics, whatever else. What do you see of the tools that you will put into that standard toolkit in, and dare we say, 2 or 3 years' time? That's kind
when
of
we do the next interview to see where it is.
That is a massive distance into the future.
Yeah, I'm happy to predict it as long as none of your listeners go back to this version 3 years from now. So, look, I think there's a really interesting development around low-code and no-code platforms. They're all over here at the Web Summit, and I think there's an open question. In fact, I was talking to a really good company yesterday in this space, and one of the things that we talked about is we have embraced this idea of citizen-led innovation. But you shouldn't mistake citizen-led innovation as being a replacement for professional development. There is obviously a difference between a citizen-led innovator with really powerful tools and somebody who can develop large-scale, enterprise-grade applications. And I think the low-code, no-code world is going to actually implicate the professional development world in a really, really significant way. So I suspect when we're sitting together 3 years from now, what you're going to see is a lot more professional development, large-scale enterprise deployments are going to be driven by low-code, no-code. Not 100%, but you'll see a much greater percentage, if you will, of the relative effort going to low-code, no-code.
Yeah.
Which means that at the same time, you're going to see this continued elevation of what the citizens are doing, right? Because as the low-code, no-code platforms accelerate the large-scale development, then the impact that people can have on the citizen-led side is going to be even, in my view, even greater. And I think either side of that you sit on, or actually one of the great things about a lot of these upskilling journeys that companies like ours and others are on, is you're getting more mobility across those populations, right? People that maybe never thought they would be a professional developer now unlock these capabilities and skills and interests, and they then pursue that. And I think one of the best things about it is with that mobility, you're just going to create more pathways and opportunities for people than maybe they even see from where they're sitting today.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting conundrum that the citizen developer or citizen IT and a pure developer. Someone used the key phrase a couple of weeks ago to me, and they were objecting to it. I love the low-code movement. It says, I don't want a citizen dentist touching my teeth. You know? But maybe that's the dichotomy, as in you have the pure play professionals on the enterprise critical systems, and then you have this powerful tool that abstracts all of the complexity, allowing them to do 1,001 things that a very restricted number of IT people might have been able to deliver in 2 years' time. So the business grows at a rate of knots, presumably.
Yeah, the citizen dentist is a pretty good visual, actually. So I think I'm going to agree with whoever said that. But I think the key, and maybe it's a terrible analogy to stretch further, but the key is you think about the tools that we're all using for ourselves. They're very different, right? So I've got a power toothbrush. I didn't have a power toothbrush 20 years ago. I don't know if that's citizen dentistry or not, but I think the capability to give people more ways to influence the way they work. We shouldn't mistake that for saying that's going to cause us to allocate citizens the responsibility of securing our networks. That's an expertise, it's a deep expertise we need to continue to foster and develop. And I think figuring out where that line is, I think is going to be part of the technology evolution that we're going to be going over in the next few years.
Yeah, and I love it as well, Joe, because it's clearly speaking loads to me that you do what you say you're going to do, because I've seen what PwC is coming out with the remote working aspect, of being more agile, looking at how you're really doing that, because a big thing we see, Joe, is the knowledge gap, so the training gap, and the amount of times we hear, but isn't AI coming to take my job? I go, absolutely not, because it is there to make you more valuable and to increase your skill set, to give you more time back. And that brings me back to, because you've got a very interesting talk coming up tomorrow, and this podcast episode will be after that talk. But can you give us a little bit of a sneak peek, or give a bit of a background to people that might not be able to catch that talk? What is it about? Because the title's Working Smarter, Not Harder, correct? And what does that mean to you, Joe? And how? Give us a bit of a background on that.
I think that's a bit of the holy grail, right? We've all been trying to figure out how to work smarter, not harder. But particularly in a pandemic and post-pandemic world, everything's changed, right? I was talking with somebody this morning, and I said the reality is there is no playbook for where we all are. We are all in uncharted territory, and I do think that there is a moment that's developing, which is an opportunity for our people. It's an opportunity for employees to shape the experience in a way that perhaps 20 years ago, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, employees couldn't shape the experience. But we also have to confront the realities. The realities are that I have the great privilege of having a nice space to work in my home. Not everybody has that. You've got to confront the reality that for some people, the home environment may not be the most conducive environment for them to producing the best work. They may not want to be in the home environment, in their apartment, or wherever they may be. But they need the workspace. And so we're all figuring out what the new balance is between the traditional workspace and then the virtual workspace. The other piece is we've been talking a lot, and we gave, as you shared, we gave all of our people in the U.S. the option to work virtually. And 23% of our people have opted in. So we will have a very significant number of our people who will not join us in the office any more than 0 to 3 days a month, and probably a big chunk of them will stay at 0 unless we have a collaboration event that brings them in. That's a new challenge for management. It's a new challenge for employees, right? We have to make sure that virtual doesn't equal remote. We know those people to be connected. They need to have the collaboration opportunities. We have to provide them the coaching and the support that they deserve, and that's going to be new challenges for everybody. At the same time, we also have to make sure they get off the computer at some decent time of the day, and they can still live the life that they want to live. And that's, we all work to live, not live to work.
Well, just quickly, I'm reading a really good book at the moment. It's called Thinking Backwards, and another one, Creativity Inc., which is all around how Pixar works and all these kind of areas. And they're pointing to the same kind of message, Joe, of looking at it, well, we're probably going to make mistakes, but if we're not making mistakes, we're not innovating, we're not becoming the best that we can do. And I think that's such a core message with knowledge gap and going that way, and as long as the structure, and like we said earlier, the outcomes there. And I think, Kieran, you wanted to touch on it quickly around what's being done with UiPath and all these different areas of really showing how you are doing that innovation at PwC.
No, it's a great example, I have to say, and I love what you're saying there, Joe, a moment ago, the PwC have made mistakes. Not many companies admit that. It's really humbling, because you do see a lot of automation programs going wrong. One quick question, because we're running out of time here, just for a moment. Someone said not everybody can play the piano. Therefore, can everybody be a citizen robot developer? And how do you manage the balance between I can't play music and I need to play music?
Yeah, look, I like that analogy even more, because the reality is just about everybody likes to sit down and try to bang out a tune on a piano, but that does not make us concert pianists, right? And I think it's this point about what kind of development are we talking about? And we talk about citizen developers, but we also call them citizen innovators at PwC. The reason that I think that difference makes an impact is because what I really want to do is I want to empower people to solve the problems that are on their desk. And I want to give them tools that allow them to do that. And they have to have the knowledge to understand when they've hit the limits of their knowledge to pull in others that can help them get it to the next place. We used a function that we built inside the firm, an application we built called Digital Lab. We talked about it publicly a lot. And so what it allowed is our citizen developers to share the results of their innovation with their colleagues. It also allowed us, from the business-led side, to look at those innovations and make the determinations when they needed to be fortified in a different way for the enterprise. When organizations can get that value chain right and help the citizens unlock the innovation on the ground at the front edge, if you will, and then take it forward and say, okay, what really needs to be fortified for the enterprise? What is just a good innovation for Kieran's desk? That judgment and having that visibility, I think that's the future.
Fantastic. So if people want to find out a little bit more about you and PwC, where do they go to?
PwC.com is probably the place I would send you, and you can get a look at us in the U.S. or any of our territories around the world.
Fantastic.
Joe, thank you for having us today. It's really amazing. Really appreciated the episode, and looking forward to sharing this with our listeners. It'll be awesome.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, and looking forward to staying in touch. You can keep me accountable for all those guesses I made.
I love it.
Thank you.